Well, hey there. We are live from Take a Hike Studios just outside of Dallas, Texas. I'm your host, Christian Tatch, and this is College Football Now. Of course, as always, before we get started, I want to go over a couple of ground rules for the chat. Absolutely no politics, no attacks on race, religion, creed, gender, or sexual preference. And let's keep it simple. All right, guys, so we had quite the interesting week last week. In the college football landscape. Not a whole lot going on this week. The matchups, matter of fact, I'm going to believe we have any top 10 or top 25 matchups, ranked team versus ranked team at all this week. That doesn't mean there's not going to be a lot of good games going on, though. So let's start off and go over some of the action from last week, shall we? So last weekend, we had some interesting games. We had some great games, and then we had some that were just kind of meh. But first, we'll go over number 4, Oklahoma. They take care of business, 70-14 at home against South Dakota. A little bit of a rough start against Houston, or a slow start against Houston, but showed their strength there. Then they came back home again, and they were playing South Dakota. Jalen Hurts, another great day. Didn't throw the ball around a whole lot. He was 14 of 18 for 259 yards and 3 touchdowns. Oklahoma's really not going to be tested at all until the Red River rivalry there in October, where they'll face a battle-tested Longhorn team. Now, when I say battle-tested, it's not that Oklahoma's just going to walk through every game, especially considering some of the Big 12 games that they're going to be coming up in here starting next week. But Texas has already played one of the big boys. Matter of fact, a team in LSU that I feel is going to make it to the college football playoffs ahead of Alabama. So Texas would have met a match already. But that does not mean Oklahoma is not going to fare well. I still think that that's going to be one heck of a game come October. But again, number 4, Oklahoma, taking care of business, doing what they need to do, tweaking some of the fine-tuned items, and I think they're gonna have it pretty easy going here on out up until that game in October. Number 5, Ohio State, no problems with Cincinnati of 42-0. Now, if you remember last week, I picked that as one of my adventurous upset picks of the week. Obviously, that did not happen. Cincinnati failed to score at all. Ohio State really was in control the entire game. A couple mistakes here and there, but I really think that they've got what it takes to continue winning. They got some big matchups coming up soon. Nothing this week. All right, number 7, Michigan gets a huge scare against Army. End up winning 24-21 in overtime, and actually they could have lost this game regular time. As time ran out, Army misses the potential game-winning field goal from not too far of a distance. Shot it wide right, and they could have ended it then. Going to overtime, Michigan scores first with a field goal. Army gets the ball back. Believe they're on 3rd down. They drop back to pass for only the 6th time in the entire game, and he fumbles that. No, it may have been 4th down, actually. Yes, 4th down. He fumbles that snap for going back for the pass and falls on it, but counts as a sack. Game over. Win Michigan. Now listen, before you start beating up Michigan too badly, understand this. Army, for the last couple of years and really throughout the last decade or so, always tends to play a much higher ranked team or just a better team very well. All right, they love to try to pull off the upset. Very rarely does it happen for them, but what they do is they frustrate the opposing teams. They're on the field for a very long time because it's all running game, and their offense is on the field, and they're eating up clock. So the other team's offense really needs to come out and score quick if they can stop Army from scoring as well. So Anyways, number 10, Auburn. Slow start against Tulane. Ends fairly strong with a 24-6 win at home. Really, guys, I mean, it's Tulane. You're the number 10 team in the nation after beating, Oregon in week 1. I really feel like you probably should have played a little stronger, but solid game there towards the end. No problems winning there. All right, guys, Pac-12 is in trouble. Conference could end up beating themselves out of the playoff again, right? I mean, look, first you have Oregon losing to Auburn. Now, I'm not going to count too much on that because Auburn is a good team. However, this week, Washington, the second best team in the conference, who could have really taken this and gone undefeated, loses to Cal. Now, it's a close one, but there's no way Cal should have won that game. And Washington just did not take care of business. They really didn't. It's still going to come down in Washington and Oregon as far as the Big 12 title is concerned. But they need to be very, very careful. Until they play, except for the game where they play each other, the only chance they might have of getting into the playoffs is if something happens to one of the other conferences, and whichever team wins the game against the other, they win out the entire rest of their schedule. So tough row to hoe there. Number 23, Stanford loses big to USC, 45-20. That was another game that I picked Stanford to win. But that USC could possibly pull off the upset, and boy, did they. I'm not ready to claim that USC is back, but they really took care of business at home against Stanford. Stanford was is now ranked number 23rd, was ranked 23rd. I think now they've been knocked out of the rankings. Was really hoping a little bit more production out of Stanford early in the season. We'll see how their season goes. I tell you what, I was wrong on another one too. SMU manhandles North Texas 49-27. And to be honest with you, that game wasn't even as close as the score indicates. SMU was in control of that game the entire time. I was not able to watch it. It was not televised, but I did go back and watch some of the highlights later on. Reading the stats, doing the play-by-play and the box score, SMU just really dominated. Now, I don't know if SMU has turned a corner. Remember, when June Jones first went there, before he left to go, back out of state, his first season was rough. The second season, they made a turnaround, went to a bowl game. This new coach at SMU may be doing the same this year. I don't know. I will know October 5th, as I'm going to be going to that game. We'll talk about that a little bit later. North Texas, again, I don't know if their hype was too much for what their actual production is going to be this year, or if SMU is actually better than they were supposed to be and North Texas wasn't prepared for it. Either way, they did not show up to play. It really bit them. And, of course, that's definitely going to ruin any chances for any of those quarterback awards for Mr. Fine over there at North Texas. Next one up. This was one of the two biggest games of the week. Number 1, Clemson, their defense stifles number 12, Texas A&M, 24-10. Kellen Mond absolutely lacked leadership and confidence from the very start. There were a couple of decent drives late in the half where they ended up with a field goal. Another one towards the end of the game where they ended up with a touchdown. The problem is the offense just couldn't move the ball. They were not in control. I believe Kellen Mond started off the game 0-4 or 0-6 in passing attempts. The running game had some success, but the passing game was just non-existent. The flip side of the ball, Trevor Lawrence played pretty darn well, guys. There's a reason why he is in the forefront of the Heisman race. He finished 24-35, 268 yards, only one touchdown, but that's really all he needed. However, the other Clemson player that is on the Heisman watch list, ETN, was held to 53 yards on 16 carries. The A&M defense is still very good against the run. Their backup running back was able to run for a few more yards than that, the way that they were playing him out. A lot of injuries in this game. The heat played a factor. And it looks like after this game, the Texas A&M starting running back, Javon Corden, is now out for the season. Late in the third quarter, he got hit going out of bounds. Did something to his hamstring, had surgery today. Surgery went well, but they're estimating he is out for the season. But Clemson, again, showed why they are number one. Their defensive packages were very simple in nature as far as how they were lining up. They did a 3-3-5. However, that middle three, they were all over the place. Both blitzes, coverage, everything else. So Clemson, everybody talks about the offense. They can score at will. They really can. But I believe it's their defense. Now, for those of you who were betting on the game, Texas A&M did cover the spread. The spread was 16.5, and they only lost by 14. Now for the biggest game of the week, as I talked about last week. You had number 6, LSU, survives number 9, Texas, and leaves Austin with a win, 45-38. Wow. What a fun game to watch. This is one of those games that I always talk about where I say this is what college football games are meant to be. It was back and forth. Yes, there was mistakes. Was everything perfect? Absolutely not. But so many things went well for both teams. I can't even cover them all. Offense and defense. You would think with a score like 45-38, this was more of an offensive battle. It really wasn't. The score is deceiving. The defense has played extremely well, especially against the run. We knew LSU's defense was going to be stout. They always have been. Pardon me. But the Texas defense was just as good. Problem is, they weren't prepared for what offense the LSU was bringing. And I'm going to tell you something right now. This is an offense we have not seen at LSU in who knows how long. These boys can run. They can pass. Joe Burrows is in complete command of this team. I really don't know the last time that LSU has had an offense that was proficient like this. Ehlinger played brilliantly during this game, both passing and rushing. Definitely the undisputed leader of the Longhorn team. He's the vocal leader. He's the athletic leader. He really takes command of that offense when he comes out onto the field. Very impressed with him. I think that he's only going to get better as the season goes on. This team is only going to get better as the season goes on. Texas fans, don't worry about this loss. Look, it's early enough in the season, and it's a non-conference game. You go into the conference game starting this next week, and you win in the conference games. You will end up playing in the Big 12 championship. If you're undefeated in conference play, you will end up in the college football playoffs. However, you do still have Oklahoma to worry about. That offense, that attacking offense there in Oklahoma, led by Jalen Hurts, you are going to see something a little bit different than what you saw in LSU, but just as powerful. So watch out. Again, from what I've seen, your defense at Texas is going to be a little bit better, or quite a bit better than the defense for Oklahoma. But Texas, you definitely put the Big 12 on notice. They're going to show up in Dallas, battle-tested, ready to go against a fiery Oklahoma team. LSU fans, guys, LSU as a team, you put the SEC as well as the rest of the country on notice. You're going to be scary in every single game. Obviously, your two biggest ones, Alabama, Texas A&M. The Bama game is going to be a heck of a battle. If Texas A&M plays the way they did this weekend, you're going to have no problem with them at the end of the season. That is a long way out. We'll get to that when it happens. But I tell you what, LSU definitely put themselves in position to do very, very well this season and showed a lot of heart, a lot of guts, a lot of talent. All right, before we kind of start going into the rankings, I kind of want to talk about something else that irked me a little bit. Now, I saw today that a USC wide receiver, Four-star prospect, came into USC, supposed to do very well, a lot of hype, did not get any real playing time in the first 2 games. He has now entered the transfer portal. And let me tell you something. This transfer portal thing is really starting to get under my skin. You did your recruiting period. Most of y'all did your recruiting period for 2 years. You visited countless schools. You got countless letters. You sat and you talked with your parents. You talked with your coach. You talked with the coaches trying to recruit you. You've talked to friends. You've talked to other players on those teams. You've done your due diligence. Now comes signing day. You make a big video. You make a big deal out of it, right? The problem is you get in there and everybody around you is either better or at least showing to be better. Their production is a little better or they have more experience. You don't get to play, so now you leave. Unacceptable. All right? These schools have already put in time, energy, money into getting you into that school with no guarantee that you're going to play. And if you want a guarantee that you're going to play, you have to provide that guarantee. Now, there are a few notable exceptions that I will accept as being able to enter the transfer portal. First of all, they did it in the off season. Okay? You don't do this in the middle of a season. You carry your weight. You do your due diligence. All right? And after the end of the season, that may be a little different discussion. But these 3 transfers from last year, I 100% agree with why they transferred. First of all, let's take in NCAA violations by the school or by the football team. So, Ole Miss, all right, Shea Patterson, he entered the transfer portal. He ended up at number 7, Michigan. I agree with the ability to be able to do that. Look, the team and the school were busted for violations committed before you were a part of the team, and that had absolutely nothing to do with you. Now the team cannot make a bowl game, cannot, handle some of their scholarships. All right? There's a bad light underneath or over them. I think that that's okay to be able to transfer. Look, you had nothing to do with that. And you want to be able to show the best that you can be. So he makes a transfer. He ends up in Michigan. He's back in the spotlight a little bit. Again, that's going to go. Yes, Rob, I understand. I had a technical issue with the ticker. I promise it'll be updated next week to the correct one. Had a little programming issue. Sorry about that. I'll actually go over the times when I talk about the games here shortly. And I agree with you. There's 25,000 Tennessee season ticket holders that have entered the transfer portal. You know, that's funny. Look, Tennessee is just having a I don't know. I don't even know what to think about them right now. But going back to the transfer portal, so Shea Patterson, I understand that transfer. I'm okay with that. The other 2 transfers also did it the right way. They did it after the season. Let's go with the first one. All right? Kelly Bryant transfers out of Clemson and ends up at the University of Missouri. Okay? Again, he did this in the offseason. Now, this is a guy who took his team to the national championship in 2017 and won the national championship. They went to a big-time bowl game the year before that, and last year he was in for the first several games being a leader as well. Problem is he did get a little bit hurt. During that hurt period, they swapped quarterbacks back and forth. Trevor Lawrence ended up winning the job. Kelly Bryant stayed. He worked with the developing quarterbacks. He worked with Trevor Lawrence as a guide. He was on the sidelines during the national championship game this past January. Then he realized he had lost the starting job. He's got 1 year left of eligibility, and this man is good enough to start anywhere and good enough to play in the NFL with a few minor adjustments and some, development. He needs to be seen. And being on the bench behind Trevor Lawrence, as good as Trevor Lawrence is, granted, he may get hurt, but if he doesn't, now you've got a quality quarterback sitting on the bench that took you to the national championship game. Look, Dabo Swinney, when interviewed and talking about Kelly Bryant, had no hard feelings about him transferring, and I don't either. Not sure I would have picked Missouri, but the good news is for him is that being in the SEC, you are going to be on TV, seen across the country every single week. So this is your chance to shine. The other one that I accept is graduate transfer Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is also a player that took Alabama to the national championship and won it. Went to a national championship, did lose. Went to another national championship. They won in overtime due to Tua coming in and rattling things up a little bit. Jalen stayed with the team yet another season, his senior season. He stayed with the team to be there in support of all of his teammates and to help them, if needed, throughout last year's campaign, in which they went to the national championship game again, obviously getting beaten badly by by Clemson again. But at that point, he graduated college. He was good to go. Transferred. Now he's at Oklahoma, where he has yet another chance at either trying to get a Heisman, but I think what he really wants is another chance to go out there and win the national championship. So again, another quality QB that has already taken a team to the national championship, got replaced. I agree with him being able to move. Anybody that's in the transfer portal simply because they come out of high school, they think they're big shot, they get recruited like they're big shot, they make their announcement, they go to the school, and they don't get starting playing time right away, and then they leave. Now, I'm sure in some cases there's other things going on behind the scenes, but guys, come on. Earn your way on there. And to be honest with you, if you weren't good enough to start on that team, yeah, you might be able to start on another team. Do your dues, though, at least for the first season. These colleges put a lot of time and money into recruiting you. So that's all I'm going to say about the transfer portal. That's my rant. Feel free to comment if you're watching this podcast later or live. Comment now. But this is getting a bit ridiculous. You made your decision. You supposedly took a long time to make it. There you go. All right, moving on. Let's go to the rankings here. There was some shifts going on in the rankings, mainly in the top 4. OU gets knocked down to number 5 in favor of LSU, who was number 6, moving into the number 4 spot after beating number 9 Texas. This one's hard for me to really say if that was good or not. Look, they played a much higher quality opponent than Oklahoma did, but Oklahoma also put up 70 points. But they were also playing at home against South Dakota while LSU was on the road at number 9 Texas in a very hostile environment. I agree with this change in the rankings. Moving LSU up to the number 4 spot makes sense. Now, before all you naysayers are sitting there going, well, yeah, of course, you're going to have the top 3 team or 3 of the top 4 teams being SEC teams. Well, right now, I don't see any reason to change that. But I guarantee you that's going to change up. Georgia has a couple of tough games this season. Obviously, LSU has Alabama. They have Auburn. They have Texas A&M. Something's got to give there. So be patient early in the season with this. Everybody else kind of moved down a little bit. Florida made a little bit jump up into the number 9 spot. Michigan, with their narrow win over Army, moves down 3 to number 10. Texas does not drop far, and nor should they. They went from number 9 to number 12. I believe that is a good move. It's only 3 spots. You are still in the hunt just outside the top 10. You take care of business in the Big 12, and you're going to be all right. You're going to see yourself in the top 5, possibly in the top 4, if you're able to beat Oklahoma twice this year, being in the conference championship game. Couple others moves, and Rob, by the way, I do agree with you. The graduates, I think all graduates have earned their right to be able to transfer if they want to. especially in the case of Jalen Hurts. Not only did he graduate, but an exceptional athlete and leader, needs to be with that, and went to a team in desperate need of someone like him. So that was good. Now Oregon stays at 15th. Texas A&M moves down. Oregon moves up to 15th. They were 16th. Texas A&M moves down by 4 to number 16 after really a beating by Clemson. Look, again, they beat the spread. It was only a 14-point loss, but it was a bad 14-point loss. I think keeping them at in the top 20 is definitely warranted for now. We will find out in 2 weeks when they play Auburn. At which point, if they lose to Auburn, who's ranked number 8, I think the forgiveness is gone for Texas A&M. People are going to start seeing that trend going down. You're going to see them outside of the top 20. And then if they were to lose to Alabama, you're going to see them outside of the top 25 altogether. So, Aggies, you better put yourself on notice. Have a very good week of practice. Beat up on Lamar almost to the point where you may have to cut them another FCS check at the end of the game for an apology for beating up so badly, for being so angry after your play last week, but we'll see. Everybody else kind of moved up a little bit. Washington State was not even... I'm sorry, is that Washington State? That is Maryland actually moved up quite a bit from unranked to 21st. Why? They put the hurtin' on Syracuse. Good Lord. Another 70-plus point game. That offense is on a roll. Syracuse I had picked to be number 2 in the ACC, the only team that could possibly battle Clemson to a finish there. I tell you what, ACC, you better watch out for Maryland. They can sneak in at number 2. Maryland's on a roll, especially within the ACC, to end up possibly a 10-win team. The other one notables is you do have Boise State. Washington. Washington, like I told you earlier, Washington was ranked number 14. They are now 23rd. They had the biggest loss in the polls of the week, moving down 9 spots. USC and Virginia both moved into the top 25 with their wins. USC especially deserved it with their win over a ranked Stanford team who was ranked 23rd, and they absolutely just manhandled them. All right, so moving forward, let's talk about some of the games this week. First one I'm going to bring up, it is a Friday night game, 8:15 p.m. Central Time. You got Wake Forest at home against North Carolina. Why do we all care about this game? Well, I tell you what, North Carolina led by Mr. Sideline himself, Mr. Living Room himself, Mr. Recruiter himself, Mac Brown, has now found themselves 2-0 for the first time in a very long time. And they're on a roll. They taste blood. They're going to go on the roll against a Wake Forest team that tends to struggle in games like these. I do expect North Carolina to go in and win. A close one against Wake Forest, which would mean that North Carolina would already be 1 game ahead of their total win total for 2018. So watch this one. It is on Friday night, 8:15 p.m. Central Time. Another Friday night game. The first game was 5 p.m. Central Time. The second game we're going to talk about, this is 8:15 p.m. Central Time. This is number 20, Washington State, playing at the University of Houston. All right? This will be a fun game to watch. Houston's kind of on a roll right now. Yes, they lost that opener at Oklahoma. But you know what? They showed something against Oklahoma. And Washington State, being led by the Pirate out there, Mike Leach, they've got a few issues as well. Yes, they are ranked, but watch out for this game. This could be an upset, but it is not my upset pick of the week. I still think Washington State wins it at home, but watch out for Houston. Talking to a buddy of mine that refs out that way, we believe that Houston could be one of those teams that could be the leader of the conference towards the end of the year if they keep playing and progressing the way that it looks like their talent level is at. Next game I want to talk about. This one is a game of the mid-tier teams. To be honest with you, Kansas State plays at Mississippi State. This is Saturday at 11 a.m. Kansas State looking to defend their home turf. They've had a rough start this season. Mississippi State is on a roll. They want to make sure they go bowl eligible. This is a key game to make sure that that happens. They also have a tough slate in the SEC West with games against Auburn, Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M. Ole Miss, I don't think they're going to have a problem with, but they do have possibly 5 potential losses happening in conference if they're not careful. This is a game that they need to win, and they need to win it on a road against a Kansas State team that's not in the upper echelon of the Big 12. They're actually in the lower, but still a middle-based team. That's correct. That's why, Rob, it says U of H versus number 20 Washington State. So they are playing in Houston. I thought you caught me there, didn't you? Then again, I may have said it was at Washington State, but didn't mean to. All right, so Mississippi State on the road at Kansas State. I do pick Mississippi State to win this game. Next up, South Carolina at home versus number 2 Alabama. This is really actually, and this is at 2:30 p.m. Saturday Central Time. I'm going to tell you right now, look, Alabama has no problems in this game. I think they win this one. South Carolina is going to be their first test of the season to see really where they're at, where they want to be right now moving forward. In 2 weeks after their 3 weeks from this game, they do have an away game at Texas A&M. But this game right here is a good game to find out exactly where they're at. Look, South Carolina, I don't think has a chance to win this one, even though they are at home. Especially with the loss that they've already had. Not to mention, South Carolina has lost their starting quarterback for the season. Now, their backup, who played a bit last week, looked very good. So watch out for him. Things are going to be a little different. Alabama's not going to have a lot of game film, but the adjustments that Saban and his staff can usually make on the fly, I think is going to be okay for them. I take Alabama on the road. Another decent game here to try to figure out where both of these teams are. You've got number 17 UCF at home against Stanford. Now remember, Stanford lost heavily to USC this week. UCF, I don't believe, is quite as potent on defense as USC is. However, this is going to be an interesting game. It's a 2:30 p.m. Central Time game. I'm going to take UCF at home, although Stanford has a very good chance to redeem themselves, go on the road, regain their ground, and beat a ranked team to put themselves back in the ranking. It's going to be a very interesting matchup to see where both of these teams are, and if the Pac-12, that side of the Pac-12 division, has a chance to start showing some muscle. Again, I'll take UCF at home against an unranked Stanford team. Next up, we've got UCLA at home against number 5 Oklahoma. Again, I'm going to take, on this one, I'm going to take the road team to go in to UCLA and win this one. And I don't think it's even going to be close. UCLA is a pretty decent team this year, but they're still trying to find their footing. They've got some issues at quarterback, and they've got some issues on the offensive line and the defensive backs. I think that OU is going to be able to pass on them all day long. Even though UCLA is also in a pass-heavy conference there in the Pac-12. This will be Oklahoma's biggest test so far. I think it's a very good look at how Oklahoma can handle a little bit better of a team in preparation for their showdown here in October coming up in a few weeks. Again, I'm going to take number 5, Oklahoma, on the road at UCLA. Next up, look, the only reason why I'm going to talk about this game, this is number 16 at Texas A&M at home against an FCS foe, Lamar University. The series started last year. This is a 6 p.m. start time. Look, A&M's loss last week was very disheartening to the team, disheartening to the coach, disheartening to the fans. There were a lot of plays left on the field during that game. I think that A&M is going to go in and try to fine-tune, find their center again on offense, and they are going to run probably a very vanilla scheme. They're going to take a lot of the plays that should have worked last week, and there are a lot of timing issues between the Kellen Mond and the receiving core. They're going to take a lot of time doing these over and over and over and over again. So watch this game to start off slow. A&M then pulls away. I think the fans are in agreement here that anything less than a 40-point win is probably disappointing and makes the Auburn game the next week a little bit scarier. Obviously, I'm going to take Texas A&M at home against the FCS team in Lamar. Okay, I still pick this game as a decent game to watch. I want to find out if Syracuse just got shocked last week against Maryland or not. They're at home against number 1 Clemson. Look, Clemson's going to go in there. They're going to win this game. We're not going to have a repeat of last year where it was a barn burner till the end, or the year before when Syracuse actually beat them while Clemson was on their way to the national championship game. I don't think so. However, for some reason, this is Clemson's kryptonite team the last couple of years. So if they struggle at all, don't worry too much about it. They're still going to come out with a win, and I think they're going to come out with a big win. Again, Clemson has never in the history of that football program started the season as the number 1 team in the nation, and I think they're going to do everything they can to keep it that way all the way through. No doubts for anybody else. Game number 9. This is a home game. Rice versus number 12, Texas Longhorn, being played there in Houston at 7 p.m. Central Time. Look, is Rice going to even have the slightest chance of winning this game? Absolutely not. But what I'm interested in seeing is how Texas bounces back from that tough, hard-fought, very physical game last week at home against LSU. Look, this team's resilient. They're going to bounce back. They're going to beat Rice very, very badly. Okay? But what I really want to watch out for is what kind of fine-tuning that they do after the stuff they saw last week. Again, in this game, I do expect the Longhorns to go in there and run some vanilla offensive plays. Really, you're going to see maybe the same play being happening over and over again, whether it works or not the first couple of times. Guys, it may be frustrating for you Longhorn fans to watch, but don't worry about it. All they're doing is they're trying to fine-tune the things that did not work or they saw some issues with or maybe even worked last week but still need some fine-tuning. Texas is on a mission right now to win out the rest of the season. Tom Herman and staff have really got that team believing. Sam Ehlinger is the leader, undisputed leader on that team. He is not going to allow anything other than perfection this week against Rice. So, again, I'm going to take the ranked team in this one, number 12, on the road, beating Rice. All right, ladies and gentlemen, time for Christian's Upset Pick of the Week. And we have, that's right, Game Day is making their way for the very first time in Game Day history to Ames, Iowa, for the big matchup between Iowa State and number 19 Iowa. And let me tell you something, had Iowa State won a little more handedly this last week, just maybe another touchdown or two, this would have been the only ranked versus ranked team game this week. But they squeaked by a very narrow win last week. No worries, though. This is where Iowa State needs to prove that they are going to be a threat when they start their Big 12 play, which I believe they will. Look, Big Brother Iowa is leader in this series, 44-22-1. All right? However, Iowa's only won the last 4 in a row. Iowa State, it hasn't been that long ago for them to be able to win this game. And I think they're poised to do it now. They've got it at home. This crowd's going to be wild. Game day is going to be there starting at 8 in the morning. This is a 3 p.m. game. 3 p.m. Central Time. Watch this one. This is going to be fun to watch. I can't wait for this game. All right. Game of the week. The CFB Now Game of the Week. That's right. This is Saturday night, 6 p.m. Central Time. University of Kentucky at home versus number 9 Florida Gators. Why is this the game of the week in my eyes? because this is an SEC battle that I do believe is going to be a lot closer than the rankings and unrankings say they will. Look, both teams are 2-0. Both teams, remember, last year, the University of Kentucky ended a 31-year drought against the Florida Gators on the road. Florida Gators had a very narrow win against a struggling Miami team first week of the season. They played well this last week, but it was against nobody that was going to put up any kind of defense or offense against them. I'm not sure Florida's ready to hit the road in Kentucky against a crowd that remembers last year, is still living last year. It is going to be loud there in Kentucky. But I still think Florida can go in there and win. But it makes it a very exciting game. If you guys like loud games, you guys want to see some good defense, tune into this game here, 6 p.m. Central Time. Florida at Kentucky. All right, guys, so I'm going to run a little bit short this week. I do appreciate, for those of you who are going to watch this later, the views on last week's podcast. Although there weren't very many live, there were a lot of views when I posted it on the CFB Now, the College Football Now Facebook group. So I do appreciate you guys going and watching it after the fact. The views count, and really want to start moving this podcast into a really cool direction that will allow some other things to happen, especially some call-ins, and being able to broadcast out that way. So I really do appreciate it. These counters do add up. Next week, don't be freaked out. I do have a little bit of a surgery that's going to happen next week, one of two. And so I may look a little different next week. You'll see. I'll talk about that again later. However, podcast should still be on, same time, same channel, 7:30 p.m. Central. And I can't wait to see you then. Look, if you're going to pick a weekend to go out and do other things and maybe not watch a lot of football, this is the last weekend to be able to do that. Because I'm telling you, folks, next week, starting next week to the end of the season, it's no holds barred, and I know I'll be watching all of them. Till next week, folks, thanks again for tuning in. Appreciate you. Watch some football.